Got an email from the city a year ago or so, and that kind of motivated me, along with our own goals as a family, to look into a perfect space for our business, for our vision. We decided to purchase our own property. My son is 18, so we didn't want to commit to another 5 years of lease. We did all the process with the city, and we found this perfect location. There's this topic about the city, then it's really hard to deal with them, then they make the process really hard. Well, that was not my experience. I can tell you, I was a little bit nervous to do all the process with, permit, zoning, building. From the beginning to the end, I had a very smooth process. There was a group of people working with the city for my project. Dania was like a mediator, and she was always making sure that everything was gonna be smooth. And Mr. Dell, he took time off his work to meet us here with my contractor. To make sure that we were doing things correctly. I don't see that happening in other cities. I network with other business owners in Gilbert, Scottsdale, and the way how this city is, it's very particular. They're really good because we're a small community, so we're family at the end of the day, I think, and that's how they treat you. They don't treat you just as a business owner. They care about you. They really care about your business. Like when at the moment you think, oh my God, how stressful. It's at the end of the day, you realize as a business owner, they're trying to protect you. And that's what I'm most grateful for. I got an email from the city a year ago or so, and that kind of motivated me, along with our own goals as a family, to look into a perfect space for our business, for our vision. We decided to purchase our own property. My son is 18, so we didn't want to commit to another 5 years of lease. We did all the process with the city, and we found this perfect location. There's this topic about the city, then it's really hard to deal with them, then they make the process really hard. Well, that was not my experience. I can tell you, I was a little bit nervous to do all the process with, permit, zoning, building. From the beginning to the end, I had a very smooth process. There was a group of people working with the city for my project. Dania was like a mediator, and she was always making sure that everything was gonna be smooth. And Mr. Dell, he took time off his work to meet us here with my contractor. To make sure that we were doing things correctly. I don't see that happening in other cities. I network with other business owners in Gilbert, Scottsdale, and the way how this city is, it's very particular. They're really good because we're a small community, so we're family at the end of the day, I think, and that's how they treat you. They don't treat you just as a business owner. They care about you. They really care about your business. Like when at the moment you think, oh my God, how stressful. It's at the end of the day, you realize as a business owner, they're trying to protect you. And that's what I'm most grateful for. I got an email from the city a year ago or so, and that kind of motivated me, along with our own goals as a family, to look into a perfect space for our business, for our vision. We decided to purchase our own property. My son is 18, so we didn't want to commit to another 5 years of lease. We did all the process with the city, and we found this perfect location. There's this topic about the city, then it's really hard to deal with them, then they make the process really hard. Well, that was not my experience. I can tell you, I was a little bit nervous to do all the process with, permit, zoning, building. From the beginning to the end, I had a very smooth process. There was a group of people working with the city for my project. Dania was like a mediator, and she was always making sure that everything was gonna be smooth. And Mr. Dell, he took time off his work to meet us here with my contractor. To make sure that we were doing things correctly. I don't see that happening in other cities. I network with other business owners in Gilbert, Scottsdale, and the way how this city is, it's very particular. They're really good because we're a small community, so we're family at the end of the day, I think, and that's how they treat you. They don't treat you just as a business owner. They care about you. They really care about your business. Like when at the moment you think, oh my God, how stressful. It's at the end of the day, you realize as a business owner, they're trying to protect you. And that's what I'm most grateful for. I got an email from the city a year ago or so, and that kind of motivated me, along with our own goals as a family, to look into a perfect space for our business, for our vision. We decided to purchase our own property. My son is 18, so we didn't want to commit to another 5 years of lease. We did all the process with the city, and we found this perfect location. There's this topic about the city, then it's really hard to deal with them, then they make the process really hard. Well, that was not my experience. I can tell you, I was a little bit nervous to do all the process with, permit, zoning, building. From the beginning to the end, I had a very smooth process. There was a group of people working with the city for my project. Dania was like a mediator, and she was always making sure that everything was gonna be smooth. And Mr. Dell, he took time off his work to meet us here with my contractor. To make sure that we were doing things correctly. I don't see that happening in other cities. I network with other business owners in Gilbert, Scottsdale, and the way how this city is, it's very particular. They're really good because we're a small community, so we're family at the end of the day, I think, and that's how they treat you. They don't treat you just as a business owner. They care about you. They really care about your business. Like when at the moment you think, oh my God, how stressful. It's at the end of the day, you realize as a business owner, they're trying to protect you. And that's what I'm most grateful for. I got an email from the city a year ago or so, and that kind of motivated me, along with our own goals as a family, to look into a perfect space for our business, for our vision. We decided to purchase our own property. My son is 18, so we didn't want to commit to another 5 years of lease. We did all the process with the city, and we found this perfect location. There's this topic about the city, then it's really hard to deal with them, then they make the process really hard. Well, that was not my experience. I can tell you, I was a little bit nervous to do all the process with, permit, zoning, building. From the beginning to the end, I had a very smooth process. There was a group of people working with the city for my project. Dania was like a mediator, and she was always making sure that everything was gonna be smooth. And Mr. Dell, he took time off his work to meet us here with my contractor. To make sure that we were doing things correctly. I don't see that happening in other cities. I network with other business owners in Gilbert, Scottsdale, and the way how this city is, it's very particular. They're really good because we're a small community, so we're family at the end of the day, I think, and that's how they treat you. They don't treat you just as a business owner. They care about you. They really care about your business. Like when at the moment you think, oh my God, how stressful. It's at the end of the day, you realize as a business owner, they're trying to protect you. And that's what I'm most grateful for. I got an email from the city a year ago or so, and that kind of motivated me, along with our own goals as a family, to look into a perfect space for our business, for our vision. We decided to purchase our own property. My son is 18, so we didn't want to commit to another 5 years of lease. We did all the process with the city, and we found this perfect location. There's this topic about the city, then it's really hard to deal with them, then they make the process really hard. Well, that was not my experience. I can tell you, I was a little bit nervous to do all the process with, permit, zoning, building. From the beginning to the end, I had a very smooth process. There was a group of people working with the city for my project. Dania was like a mediator, and she was always making sure that everything was gonna be smooth. And Mr. Dell, he took time off his work to meet us here with my contractor to make sure that we were doing things correctly. I don't see that happening in other cities. I network with other business owners in Gilbert, Scottsdale, and the way how this city is, it's very particular. They're really good because we're a small community, so we're family at the end of the day, I think, and that's how they treat you. They don't treat you just as a business owner. They care about you. They really care about your business. Like when at the moment you think, oh my God, how stressful, it's at the end of the day.
We're going to call to order the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on Monday, March 24th at 6 p.m. We will have the invocation by Commissioner Yocum, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Robertson. Please rise if you're able to.
Dear Heavenly Father, we meet to serve our community, to use our resources wisely and well, to represent all members of our community fairly, and to make decisions that promote the common good. We recognize our responsibility to the past and to the future, and the rights and needs of both individuals and the community. Bless this commission, our city leaders, our fellow Maricopians, and the men and women in uniform who provide us the opportunity and the freedom to do so. As trusted servants, we seek blessings on our deliberations and on our efforts here today. May we act wisely and well. In your name we pray. Amen.
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That'll take us to roll call.
Commissioner Brems.
Here.
Commissioner Robertson. Here. Vice Chair Wattis.
Here.
Chair Singleton.
Here.
Commissioner Yocum.
Here.
Commissioner Klob.
Here.
And Commissioner Thomas.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you. That'll take us to call to the public. If you wish to speak, please complete a speaker card and submit it to the chairman prior to the start of the meeting. The procedures to follow if you address the commission are: commission requests that you express your ideas in 3 minutes or less and refrain from any personal attacks or derogatory statements about any city employee, a fellow citizen, or anyone else, whether in the audience or not. The chairman will limit discussion whenever he deems such an action appropriate to the proper conduct of the meeting. With that, I'll open the call to the public. Seeing none, I will close the call to the public. That'll take us to item 4.1, the minutes. Commissioners, any discussions? Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes.
I second it.
All right. Approved, or motion by Commissioner Robertson and seconded by Commissioner Thomas. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The motion passes. It'll take us to agenda item 5.1, continued Zone 25-01. Zone 25-01, Maricopa Museum rezone. Continued, a request by the City of Maricopa to rezone assessor's parcel number 512-01-0010, approximately 2.5 acres of land from single-family residence / planned area development, CR-3/PAD to public institutional PI, located at 20864 North Smith Farms Road, Maricopa AZ 85138. This is for discussion and action. Larry, take it away.
All right, thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners. Larry Mason, Development Services. This is for Maricopa Museum ZON 25-01. This is a city-initiated rezone to rezone a 2.5 acre property from CR3 planned area development to public institutional. This is just under a quarter of a mile north of Edison Road on North Butterfield Parkway. This case is continued from March 10th. At our last meeting during the public hearing, the Commission expressed an interest for additional information, site plan to discuss site functionality and any impacts to the neighborhood. These are the existing conditions on the site. You can see access from North Butterfield Parkway and open access from North Smith Farms Road. This is as is, and not too much expected. On the next slide, I'll show you what the proposals are, the information we have. We expect the main entrance in yellow to be expanded. The site parking we think is adequate enough. There may be, we do discuss additional ADA potentially. The house is to remain the same, no new structures added to the property. On the east side, we expect gated emergency access only, some view fencing, and closing existing access to the site. That's all we have in terms of a conceptual site plan. So let me just jump to my next slide, please. We do believe that this rezone is in conformance with the general plan. Pulling a couple of general plan objectives, promote social and cultural ties to the community through public gathering spaces, neighborhood theming, and well-connected communities, as well as preserve history and culture through public facilities and private partnerships in the form of a history museum, auditorium, cultural center, etc. Conformance to the zoning ordinance for your review is this proposal to rezone to public institutional consistent with the general plan. If any change in district boundaries is necessary to achieve the balance of land uses desired by the city, consistent with the general plan, and to increase the inventory of land within a given zoning district. And if this amendment will promote the growth of the city in an orderly manner and protect the public health, safety, peace, comfort, and general welfare. With that, we're showing you the public outreach, noting our last meeting on March 10th. Still to date, only one letter was received opposing the request. Staff recommends the Planning Commission forward a favorable recommendation to the Council to approve case ZON 25-01 as outlined in the report. That concludes my presentation. Does the Commission have any questions?
Thank you, Larry. Before I go to the Commission, I do want to open this up for public comment, as I do have a speaker card from Peg Chapados. Do you want to come up? Yep. Commissioners, comments?
Through the chair. Larry, there was discussion last time about bus parking and bus access. Has that been discussed on this new site plan?
This was very conceptual. We discussed bus parking. So what we're discussing is the area outside potentially, if that were ever to come up, that there would be no bus access on the site itself, but noting the Smith Farms Road to the east as being lengthy enough space for a bus to park with that pedestrian access and a closed gate. But that's very throwing ideas into the air that if that were to be the case, it appears the site could support that.
Yeah,
But not that it's planned.
Yeah, I think that was one of the concerns from, at least one or two of the people that spoke, having bus access directly on Smith Farms Road coming through the community versus, having it, more through the direct access on the opposite side, and having concerns of, and I share a concern, you got kids possibly trying to run over into the park across the street and so on. So I kind of share some of the same concerns with having the bus traffic go through there.
Okay, thank you.
So Commissioners, one thing,
Mr. Chair?
hold on 1 second. One thing I do want to reiterate is this is for the rezoning. Anything site plan related would come up later, so just do keep that in mind during your questions or comments. Commissioner Yocum.
I would like to make a motion that we approve.
Second.
Yeah. Okay.
You have a motion?
I fully understand that we're in the zoning phase and it's conceptual. I do support the project as a whole. However, we did have a public hearing where people spoke for and against it, and it revolved around bus access from the interior Smith Farms Road. So now we're hearing that buses won't have direct access to the property, which tells me that if buses do come in and they don't leave and go to lunch and come back to pick the kids up, they'll be parked somewhere along Smith Farms Road. And I realize this point in the game is not where we should be too concerned about that, but because we had the public hearing and they brought that concern to us, it's appropriate for us to talk about it. I hope that the city, as this project moves along in its development, would consider a loop road similar to the one off of Smith Farm Road to be off of Butterfield Parkway. If you look to the south of the existing gate, you could see a little bump out there. Almost looks like at one time there may have been a gate or a road there. Who knows? But there is room. I walked it several times in the last week or so, and there is room to put a loop in there where you can drop off kids and even still park and not affect anybody coming into through the pedestrian access. So it is still a concern, and I would hope that the city, as it progresses, would consider that in the development of the project, that we consider bus access only off of Butterfield Parkway by installing a loop road, which there is room to have. But I am in favor of this zoning change at this point. Thank you.
Lori?
Quinn, did you want to?
Do you have
Any further discussion?
any questions?
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Quinn Canold. I'm the Community Enrichment Director. I'm representing the applicant for the city, and I just wanted to speak a little bit to the questions that had arisen and hopefully shed a little light again on this. And understanding, of course, the process and not getting ahead of that process, and talk a little bit about what the city is aware of for the intent of this property, and certainly be aware that the city has, even before public comment, those questions we were taking a look at and say, hey, does this work for that? This site, built in 1956, was owned by John and Mary Lou Smith, founding members of our community. The reason that many of us are here in this room are because of conversations that happened in this home. So when they had the opportunity to sell this home or figure out what they wanted to do with it, they approached the city and said, would the city have interest in preserving this for historical purposes? That's where the conversation began. So of course we are cognizant and aware that in terms of it being situated in the middle of a neighborhood is not ideal. It's not where the city chose the spot. It's where the home exists. So we absolutely will be cognizant as we move forward towards those stages of figuring out what a site plan looks like. We'll ask those questions of, okay, what's the impact going to be? Questions about buses, again, being slightly premature because the intent of the organization to operate it, the Historical Society, may say they have no interest in running buses. If they say we are interested in running buses, we'll have to take a look at what impact that would have. We are aware that the community, even before this becomes a historical site, already had some concerns about potential traffic in there. So we, of course, will want to be cognizant of that. And as those specifics are developed, of here's the site plan, here's what the usage will be, those will all be topics of conversation and will be openly presented for consideration, and we'll have to make that determination of, is this that right opportunity? But at this stage, we're saying this is a unique opportunity for Maricopa to preserve what is almost extinct in our city, which is original pieces of history, many of which were lost to flood and fire, as many of you know. So that's our interest in saying, can we make this what we hope it can be? Okay, let's explore that with this partnering group and see what proposals come forward. And we're based off of what the Historical Society has already established their reputation for being able to produce, very excited for their possibilities. But we'll need to see what those can be. So this is the stage of saying, can we explore this?
Thank you, Wynn. Before I go to public comment, commissioners, any other comments?
I just have a comment in general. The Maricopa Historical Society added community enrichment with the museum that they have established, and I think that this museum will add enrichment to the community too. I think we need it, and I'm a champion for it.
Any other comments from the commissioners? Peg, do you still want to come up and talk?
Hi, Peg Chapados, commissioners. I'm here again. I was here on the 10th to voice my support in approving this zoning code change. I'm here again to voice that support, and I've taken the liberty to read all the supporting documentation that was attached to this agenda item. I totally understand and I empathize with the concerns expressed by my neighbors in the villages. But again, going back to what the intent of this building is, I don't think you're going to see a lot of buses, if any, come through here. The museum won't be operating 7 days a week, 8 to 10 hours a day. I think it's going to be a by reservation or appointment only site, and I think the crowds are going to be limited. So I see minimal impact to the neighborhood. Quite frankly, as I expressed earlier, I think there's more impact to the traffic in the neighborhood when the buses come through in the morning and the afternoon to pick up and drop the kids off. RVs come through our neighborhood, emergency vehicles come through our neighborhood. So I don't foresee this as being a huge impact, but in working all these years with the Historical Society, I know that they are going to be good stewards of this facility as well as the policies and procedures, and they're going to be good neighbors because that's who they are. So thank you for this opportunity, and please support this zoning code change.
That was the only speaker card I had. Does anybody else want to come forward and speak on this? No? Okay, we do have a motion and a second already on the table. So, commissioners, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All against? The motion passes. That will take us to item 5.2, CUP 25-01. This is a public hearing, CUP 25-01 SmartLink for AT&T. A request by SmartLink on behalf of AT&T to co-locate equipment onto an existing cell tower. The proposed modification will increase the height of the existing monopole by 14 feet. The site generally located at 42660 West Rancho El Dorado Parkway within City of Maricopa Incorporated limits. This is for discussion and action. Larry, take it away.
All right, thank you. Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners. The details of this request, typically these tend to come in as co-locations on existing towers. However, this site, in our zoning code, has a limit of 75 feet as a height, so we are needing to come and present this to you for your review and approval. The existing tower was approved under CUP 23-02 with a tower height of 64 feet with a stealth design, adding a few feet to 69.5. The proposed height increase is 14 feet, bringing the tower height to 78 feet, with the stealth design adding up to 83 feet. Again, they're seeking that administrative relief from the Planning and Zoning Commission. more information here. I just want to note that in addition to the 14 feet, the zoning code does have a 100% setback. We do meet that on the south. That's for your consideration to the east as well. This is just showing before and after. These are the coverage maps of the impact that this height increase would provide for customers. The way that these maps are understood from the applicant is that this is increasing coverage for people inside their homes. Staff finds that this proposed development is consistent with the general plan of medium-density residential. And if approved, the proposal will meet the requirements of the suburban ranch zoning district. And if approved by the commission, will meet the requirements outlined in section 18 of the ordinance. This is the public outreach conducted by the applicant. And to finish, staff recommends the commission approve case CUP 25-01, subject to the conditions of approval or as amended by the commission. That concludes my presentation on this item. Does the commission have any questions?
Thank you, Lori. Commissioners, any questions?
Just one question. Does the city have any concern about the fact that the tower exceeding the 100-foot height setback affects the setback from other lots? Do you have any problem with that?
Chairman Singleton,
because I know
commissioners.
you're recommending approval, but do you have any problem with that specific issue?
Certainly when it came to the right-of-way to the south, because it does not and would not affect the roadway there, no, I don't think that the concern that I would have that staff would review to the degree there would be your concern is if it needs to absolutely meet the 100-foot or 100% setback.
Thank you.
If that makes sense, if that answers your question.
I have one question.
Commissioner Robertson.
Just one question. What is stealth height? What is meant by the term stealth height?
Sure. Chairman Singleton, Commissioner Robertson, stealth is to disguise the tower. So any branches or any additional stealth designs potentially increase the height to 83 feet. That's right. And yes, that's right.
Seeing no other comments, this is a public hearing, so I will open it up for a public hearing. Is there anybody in the crowd that would like to speak on this item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, can I have a motion to approve 5.2 CUP 25-01?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Vice Chair Juarez. May I have a second? Seconded by Commissioner Brems. Any other further discussions? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? That motion passes.
Thank you.
That takes us to item 5.3, PZ 25-02. On behalf of the City of Maricopa, Mr. Danny Court with Elliott D. Pollock LLC will present an update to the Planning and Zoning Commission on the City of Maricopa housing assessment. This is an informational item only and for discussion only. Rudy, take it away.
Rodolfo Lopez, Rudy Lopez as well, Development Services Director for the City of Maricopa. Commissioners, Chairman, I don't think I've met Commissioner Thomas or Commissioner Brown, so if this is the first time seeing you, my apologies. I should be here more often. But I do trust our planning team for here to represent the Planning and Zoning Division for Development Services. I am the Director of Development Services. We are here to present Elliott D. Pollock, Danny Court will be presenting a housing assessment update. If you've been long with us here at the City of Maricopa, or lived here, we started our first housing assessment back in 2017. Around the time that we definitely identified that there was definitely a need to identify if we are in need of other housing stock other than single family. That assessment was done properly, and it did identify a lack of housing diversity in Maricopa. In 2019, we developed a plan that gave us a toolkit of what needed to be done at the time to bring another source of housing stock other than single-family homes into the City of Maricopa. Since that time, obviously, coincidentally with the market, multifamily has definitely driven itself for the past 5+ years here in Maricopa. Now that the plan, the assessment has been somewhat now 8 years in the making, we want to go ahead and do another assessment and see where we're at today in terms of is there still more need for housing assessment, or where that demographics is. So we hire LED Pollock to help us provide that information for us to kind of, in a way, dovetail into now our general plan to look at what should we focusing on more or less, or what is the right number of barometer itself. So with that being said, I'm going to introduce you to Mr. Danny Court to present you a full assessment of what's being presented. After today's presentation, this will be given to City Council as a discussion only. This is not for action, but just for informational purpose of the assessment itself.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for having me. This has been several months in the making. Housing has been the topic of conversation all across the country, regionally, in the state. And so it's very appropriate that the City of Maricopa come through, see what their latest housing outlook looks like. We delve into demographics here and look at your previous housing plan to see do the goals still make sense, what could be taken going forward, what might need to be adjusted. But we'll dive into the numbers here. I've brought 35 of my favorite slides, so we'll get through them together. I did notice, though, this is not the most up-to-date presentation, but the report that was sent out does have the most up-to-date information, and I'll point out any numbers that differ here, and we'll get you an updated presentation soon. But just wanted to introduce this, talk about data sources and the limitations to it. That's been a topic of conversation. All the demographic and economic factors. Maricopa is a very quickly growing community. And then look at all parts of the housing market. So just a real quick primer here. We're looking at all influencing factors to housing, including demographics, your economic conditions, and then, as Rudy pointed out, this is going to be used as information in your general plan and housing element. And so to that extent, what kind of policy decisions could be made or should be made, or do you want to make in terms of encouraging different types of housing? The data. I live in data. I bury myself in spreadsheets all day long. I know that's not everybody's ideal job, but it is mine. And so we look at data, and the good news is for Maricopa, you've reached a population that the U.S. Census now says you're large enough that we're going to report annually on the American Community Survey. So no longer are you constrained by the 5-year average. Again, because this has been such a dynamic market and everything's been moving quickly, the 5-year data is once it's produced, it's already outdated in terms of what's actually happening in the housing market. The bad news is that you're still at a population size that they're suppressing a lot of the results based on small sample size. So we're getting some updated information on the annual, some of it's suppressed, and so we're out looking for all relevant, basically timely market information that's accurate to supplement that census data. The city staff has been amazing at producing their internal data, permits, and economic development opportunities and the pipeline and things that are going on. So those have all been incorporated. We also have several data sources that we purchase, including CoStar. I've talked another apartment vendor into starting to track Maricopa, so they're beginning to do that. But we've all got that in here, and the data sources are listed as in each of the tables. So wanted to introduce just the demographic factors. Again, this is just a snippet of what you'll see in the report. But we're very interested in population growth. We've actually formulated 2 additional scenarios above and beyond what the state's official population forecast is for Maricopa. We believe it's too conservative. We think your growth is going to be more robust than what Maricopa Association of Governments has come up with and the state has adopted. And we'll show you why. Looking at age, family dynamics, household size, inflation in the housing market and pricing, all kind of coming together here. Probably no surprise to anybody, Maricopa has been the fastest growing municipality in Pinal County over the last 14 years. The official state estimate for 2024 is 73,300 residents. So nearly growth of 30,000 residents in the last 14 years. So you are the largest incorporated municipality in Pinal County until Santan incorporates and beats you at that. But for now, you are the largest municipality in Pinal County. You also have some seasonal residents here. So the census count was about 1,500 households are seasonal residents. And so, for 6 to 7 months of the year, your city grows by 3,000 to 4,000 people that are visiting here. That's not counted in your permanent residents. Here's the population projections that we discussed. Your historical population estimates there, again, 2024 just being released as 73,300. The population projections from Maricopa Association of Governments and then adopted by the state were released 2 years ago. You have exceeded population in each of those first 2 years of the forecast. And so this forecast from MAG has been rebenched to your current population. So if you have an old report showing the forecast from the state, these numbers are slightly above that because we've adjusted for your accelerated population in the last 2 years. Now, we considered the MAG and / state forecast to be, we would call that your baseline forecast or your most conservative forecast in our opinion. So our firm produced the red line there of forecast. You'll see that there's not much difference in the short term. So 25 through 28, everyone's kind of on board with a 4 to 6% growth rate. It's only in the outer years, beyond the 3 years, where we differ in opinion from MAG. They create a much more conservative forecast, lowering their annual growth rates. Ours, we're basically maintaining what we've seen in your city in terms of growth, and we base that on the permits that are being pulled for both single family and multifamily. And then when we talked to your economic development folks, they said we're being too conservative, and they believe that you're going to have even more robust growth, that we're going to see tens of thousands of new jobs, these big business parks and the innovation park from University of Arizona. As those come to fruition, that's going to create more demand for housing. That's going to drive more population in with that. And so considering that as well, we've created this optimistic forecast. So that's when that green line is basically, okay, these big master plans, the commerce parks, the U of A the campus comes in and does really well and boosts that demand source for housing. So looking again back to demographics, the age in household, very relatively young population in Maricopa, lots of families, but you also do have non-family households. The census reports nearly 5,000 households of a single person, so one person household. There's nearly 5,000 households there. There's also other types of families. There's reported 7% are single parent households. And again, you look at the population here, a very young population, but there is also an aging population as well, a pretty good distribution there. All of these are to again look at what are our household sizes, what are their compositions, what are the ages, so that we can consider housing types that are most appropriate, assuming that residents of Maricopa want to stay in Maricopa and they have appropriate housing to do so as they adjust to their different family compositions. These are the two big conversations that we had with economic development. Some very large-scale employment projects that are being considered and proposed. There's already about just under 200,000 square feet of other commercial development underway. Our economic models suggest that's another 400 jobs that will be added once that just the 200,000 square feet are developed. the two employment projects. So the Smart Rail Park, currently estimated at bringing in 13,000 jobs, creating 13,000 jobs on site, and obviously you'd have some ripple effect jobs increasing that number. And then the U of A area of innovation, again, direct on-site jobs of 11,300. There's reports of ripple effect creating maybe 25 to 30,000 jobs in total once that's all underway. So again, depending on the timing of these developments as they absorb or they come to market, you could see higher growth projections factored into our housing demand. In terms of home price appreciation, this is a chart that is different from your report here. The Pinal County Assessor did report some condominiums in the city of Maricopa. That was a head scratcher for city staff. We looked at the parcels that they said are condos. They're technically condos, but they look like single family detached homes. They just are on a private street without, but they're not what you would think of a condominium, an attached product of one or more stories. So in the report, we've aggregated that condominium sales data into the single family home, but it basically doesn't move the needle much. There's very few that are listed as condos. So that being said, single family home prices, again, you're not immune to what happened all around the state and the country, took off post-COVID. So single family home prices in the city up 58% in the last 5 years to now an average of $365,000. The manufactured homes, again, not a huge inventory in the community, but those prices have risen over 100%. So those, again, averaging $287,000. And then the double whammy of borrowing rates increasing over that time period. So instead of getting a 4% or a 3% mortgage, we're now hovering around 6.5% to 7% mortgage. You can see there that home prices did peak in 2022, and they've moderated some, but because borrowing costs increase over that time, it's actually more expensive to afford the lesser priced home today than it was in 2022 with the lower mortgage interest rate. So right now, that $365,000 home, it's a $93,000 salary to afford that at spending 30% or less of your income on that. And again, this is pretty typical, but you'll see in the report there, Maricopa still has one of the most affordable housing stocks in the greater Phoenix area. It should be on every billboard that you still have a home that you can buy, even resale or new, priced under $400,000. It's something that you just really can't find in Maricopa County anymore. So while you may have been used to those lower price points, and they're much higher than what they were 5 years ago, it's still relatively affordable here. Looking a little bit more at household characteristics, your average household size right now is just over 3 persons per household. One unique thing is when the census breaks out between owner-occupied and renter-occupied units, you actually have a larger household size among renters than you do owners. That's usually flipped, but that does also kind of reflect what your housing stock is. The census has not picked up your new multifamily units by and large. So when they're looking at renters, these are renters in single-family homes in the city, which are just comprised more of families, larger families, and so that's what's reflected in the data. We expect with all these new multifamily units, though, that household sizes are going to continue to trend downward toward like a greater Phoenix average of about 2.6, 2.7 persons per household. Looking at income, median average income in Maricopa at $97,000, the median income at $83,600. Incomes have been increasing over the last 5 years. That's the chart to the right. So in the city of Maricopa, median incomes have increased by 20% over the last 5 years. But comparing that 20% increase to household income to the 58, 60% increase in home prices, that's where we're getting these affordability issues that are coming in. We're going to go quickly through the inventory of the housing that you do have. Everybody knows, the largest inventory of housing in the city of Maricopa is the single-family detached unit. Again, as you see, these are the numbers reported in the census, and we have the apartment inventory in later slides here. But you see, it's all in the single-family detached home side. About 180 manufactured homes, and when we compare that to the county has a much larger stock of other types of units. So 77% single family in the county versus 96% in Maricopa. That has changed with these new apartments coming in, and we'll show you how that differs. Here's the permit activity that's been occurring in city of Maricopa. Again, green representing single family homes. That was basically exclusively what was being built in the city until the last few years. So the blue representing new multifamily, including build for rent. We are now up to 1,331 apartment units in the city. That represents about 5% of the housing stock now. And by the end of 2025, we expect with all of the apartments that are currently under construction that will be delivered, that will grow to 11.5% or maybe a little bit more with these new numbers here. We looked at different types of housing occupancy. What are people renting? What are people owning? Again, these numbers are going to change dramatically as the multifamily inventory starts to be recognized by census and brought in. But interesting to see, how many single-family detached units are being rented, just under 3,300. And then again, an interesting note, how many single-person households we have here that are, if they're a renter, they're a single person renting a full single-family home, 3 or 4 bedrooms. So it'll be interesting to see as these multifamily units come on, if they decide to adjust and go to a smaller unit, perhaps that'll be more affordable. But like we said, we're just going to have to continue to wait for the census to catch up to all of the activity that's happening in Maricopa and supplement with both city and other data. The new home side, these are all the active subdivisions in Maricopa. They did want to point out there, it is also showing the subdivision of Amarillo Creek, which is outside of city limits, but certainly within your market. Just wanted to call that out. But this is kind of a dot plot. The x-axis is how big the homes are that are being built. So we're really averaging, the range is 1,400 square feet to 3,000. That's the bulk of it. And then the vertical axis is what these homes are being offered at. So again, at the more affordably priced range, around $325,000, all the way up to almost $600,000. But the vast majority of the new homes, again, 1,400 to 3,000 square feet, and offered 325,000 to 450,000. So when we circle that back to affordability at today's interest rates, we need $84,000 as a household income to comfortably afford that $325,000 home, $116,000 as a household to comfortably afford a $450,000 home. Now, a lot of questions get asked. What if our interest rates come back down? Was that going to solve everything? It's going to help a lot. And you see there, we've made that calculation. For the same priced homes at a 5% interest rate, a $70,000 household income for that $325,000 home, and a $97,000 salary for the $450,000. So you see that it does make it a lot more affordable. It doesn't solve the problem when we look at your household income by income range, and we'll show you all those households there as well. The apartment inventory, here's the current stock of apartments. Several communities, 1,331 units total. The last time we checked CoStar, vacancy was 28%, and that just means that you see the last 5 communities that have opened. Those are still in lease up. Those are still being absorbed. And we've got several more, but average rents ranging from $884 to $1,900 a month. looking at it by floor plan, very few studio units. The vast majority are 2-bedroom units, and then kind of split equally between 1-bedroom and 3-bedroom. And here's kind of where we're seeing, whereas maybe 8 years ago, someone could purchase a home in the $200,000 range at a really low interest rate, and that's just gone. Where do those folks that are making $40,000 to $70,000 comfortably, affordably own something? The current market rate apartments, a studio requires about a $50,000 salary, a 1-bedroom as well. The 2 bedrooms, $65,000 salary, and a 3-bedroom, got to make about $70,000 to afford that $1,700 a month rent. But it's certainly a new inventory to the city that's providing some affordability to folks in these income ranges. The pipeline, this is a table that differs in your report. So there are 2 additional communities under construction. I believe they're both classified as affordable, so they are targeted to residents making less than median income. They'll be rent restricted and subsidized to make them affordable for households making about 60% of area median income. But so we're basically at another 2,600 units under construction compared to the 1,300 that you already have now. So that's a huge increase in inventory that'll be coming online this year and next. And then there's about 5 other communities that are approved that have not initiated construction or pulled permits for another 863 units. So a lot more inventory coming online. A mixture of the build to rent, the single family build to rent, traditional apartments, market rate apartments, and affordable. So there's actually another 1,100 units that will be coming online that'll be rent restricted, rent subsidized, for affordable rental units. Don't get scared at the high vacancy rates. Again, these are brand new communities coming online, so high vacancy is to be expected. There were about 600 apartments absorbed in the last 12 months in Maricopa. So if you kind of extrapolate that forward with the new supply coming online, it could take another 4 years total to completely absorb both the excess units that you have today and the ones that are being constructed now. I don't think it'll be, it doesn't look like an issue, and it's just, from a city's perspective, I would say we have enough inventory. We're ready for a new employer to come in. We can show them where their employees could come and move to. We've got some move-in ready. We don't have a housing supply shock right now. We're building single-family homes. We're building apartments, and we've got plenty of move-in ready units available for that. So the last few slides here, we're looking at your future forecasts. So we're forecasting out 15 years. When you look at the 3 different population forecasts, we did two scenarios for each forecast. One is if you maintained your current household size level of three persons per household, and one which we think is expected, is that your household size will over time decrease, which will increase the housing demand based on your population growth. So if you just take the middle there, basically over the next 15 years, we're expecting housing demand in Maricopa of 24,000 to 28,000 units. And so when you compare that to what you have today, it's like double what you currently are in terms of housing. If you look at that on an annual basis, that's 1,600 to 1,900 units a year. You look back at the last 5 years, you've been averaging about 1,900 units of growth. So that the current historical trend is supporting your mid-case and optimistic forecast for now. If it does end up being more like the Maricopa Association of Governments forecast, you're looking at like 800 to 950 units per year. But our expectations is that you have the land, you have the availability, you're the next place where growth is occurring. So we don't see the trend slowing down anytime soon. Affordability. The census does a really good job here. Affordability is defined as not spending more than 30% of your income toward housing costs. So for a renter, that means your rent and your utilities. If you're an owner, it means your mortgage, your utilities, your property tax, and your mortgage insurance. So there's a few more items there. When we look at, this is just a snapshot of City of Maricopa residents today. And what the census is reporting is that we have already 1,800 renters in Maricopa that are overburdened by their housing costs. They're overburdened by their rent. And so as a percentage of all renters, that's just over 50%. So just over half of all renters are spending more than 30% of their income to afford rent in Maricopa. On the owner side, it's a much larger percentage of all residents who are overburdened, but we have just under 6,000 owners in Maricopa that are also overburdened by their housing costs. So when you add those together, we have about 7,800 residents overburdened by their housing costs, whether it's by choice or by necessity. That's what we're dealing with, and it's a function of what we might want to consider going forward. Is there another housing product available to these residents to maintain their residency in Maricopa, but lower their housing burden and be better off by not being overburdened by their housing costs? So that's your current gap today. Obviously, with the high growth, that number would continue if we're not solving for that problem. When we look at it by income, again, this is how we can decide if there's a housing solution for these residents that are overburdened. So it's bucketed into pretty low income ranges, and that's what a lot of federal government programs, state programs, the tax credit programs are geared toward. That there's money available, and there's housing developers that work with these programs, but 400 of those 7,000 households earn less than $20,000 a year. So there's really no housing product besides like a public housing unit. Does Maricopa want to get into the housing business? Do they want to develop housing, manage housing that is set aside as a public housing unit where you just cap the rent at 30% of the income, no matter what it is? That's the type of income that would qualify for those kinds of units. So we've got 400 households in that category. There's another 2,200 households that earn between $20,000 and $50,000 per year. So now we're getting into close to 30 to 40% AMI level. So as you see those proposals come in, there's a lot of affordable apartments already approved and under construction. They all indicate what level of AMI they're going to be targeting. The most popular being the 60% AMI level, but something to consider when you see those applications coming in. You have this population of overburdened renters that are closer to the 30 or 40% AMI level, and is there any consideration that someone could come in and target those households for an affordable housing program or a community? 3,300 households earning between 50 and 75. These are going to be the households. Again, these can be accommodated by the private market. So market rate apartments, we've shown you, are affordable to households making between 50 and 75. So just getting that new inventory in, it's on the way, it's coming. That's going to be a great. That's going to take care of that issue, or at least offer an affordable housing unit to those households that are currently overburdened, that could move into an apartment, a market rate apartment, and then another 1,400 households earning $75,000 or more. Again, this is someone that could be in a market rate rental, and could also possibly find an ownership unit that would be affordable to them. So first two definitely need public support, tax money support, grants, things like that. Second two, private market rate development can accommodate. We just need to see that supply come in. There was another request. Maricopa is really wants to bring new jobs to the city, new types of jobs, working really hard on that, the targeted industries that are coming in. We consulted Lightcast, which is a workforce software that they do forecasts of city level employment markets. The total number, I would say, don't pay too much attention to. They're basically forecasting 1,100 new jobs in the city over the next 5 years. I think everyone's expecting to far exceed that number. But what we really wanted to take a look at was the distribution of the types of jobs that could be coming in, the types of industries that you can see. So a huge range of different industries that could be coming in here, what their average earnings are, and then we translated that into what an affordable housing payment would be. And then we basically made a determination. Again, we have currently high mortgage interest rates. So in this scenario, we set it at 6.5%. And then another scenario is if we can see some interest rate relief, say it does get down into the 5% range, how does that change everything? So that was this exercise here. So at current high interest rates, if we saw a mix of new employees coming in that kind of represent all of these industries here, we're looking at like 3/4 of them would be renters in this market, and what could be affordable to them, and the other quarter that could be owners. They would make enough to own a home in Maricopa at current rates and current prices. If that interest rate were to drop, it drops to about 50-50. So a 50-50 split, meaning that can change the needle a lot, but we'll still have this need for both ownership units and rental units, and can we find some additional ownership products that are less expensive and more affordable? And we'll talk about that in the recommendations. So when we look back at the 2017 report, you had 0 apartments, you had only single-family homes, and it was very much geared toward, we would really love to see some apartments, get some more housing diversity in here. That, again, we're now seeing the apartments. They're coming in, Maricopa's on the map. You've got the developer's attention in terms of apartments, but we're still missing some of these other types of housing, some attached ownership products. There's been some innovation here in terms of increasing density that's not necessarily an apartment. It could be a duplex product or a triplex or quadplex. So lots of different, the accessory dwelling unit discussion, again, adding some new supply for someone that would have the salary of an essential worker that could afford to live in a casita or a guest house or something like that. Increasing supply without it being necessarily, a 3 or 4 story apartment. So basically our conclusions here with this study here, you've got a really healthy stock of ownership housing that's still affordable to households that make at least $75,000, and your median income shows that it's higher than $75,000. So you've got a really good stock of affordable housing. It's become less affordable over the last 5 years. But now we've introduced multifamily products that are affordable to households that make $50,000 to $75,000. So we are addressing some very big chunks of the market in terms of demographics and income. We've got 2 apartment communities that offer rent subsidies, and we've got, I think, 5 or 6 more coming for 1,100 more units. We saw that the rent overburdened was 1,800, and we've got 1,100 more rent-restricted apartments coming in. So you're going to make a big dent in that with this new housing stock that's coming in, these new apartments. And you've got abundant land. So there's no what are we going to do with the last piece of land. There's abundant land here for decades of future development. So we've just bucketed these recommendations. Again, these are our recommendations. We'd love to get feedback from them, and like Rudy said, our housing needs assessment and recommendations will go to council. It will inform on the general plan and the housing element and what kind of goals and strategies do you want to do to address this. But these are our recommendations based on the housing assessment we had. The first one, to encourage small lot and attached ownership development. That's just something that we still haven't seen in Maricopa yet. There's some really great products, some really great designs that reduce the footprint of the home. This is how the private market is addressing affordability, is density. If we can increase the number of units on the parcels, get some ownership units, attached units, or small lot, that will really help. We're not expecting housing prices to drop any further. When interest rates come down, it could exacerbate it again. So we're really looking for more housing diversity on the ownership side so that it's more affordable to households earning less than $100,000. Continue the trajectory of encouraging higher density rental products. And again, there's a huge scale, starting with the left there is just it looks like a single family home. It's a duplex. It's a great looking product, but that can be an ownership or a rental product. There's a sliding scale of how many units you can get on with different types of densities and heights, all the way up to your traditional multifamily development there. But again, this is how the private market addresses affordability, is finding ways to make good looking but denser developments in strategic areas throughout the city. The accessory dwelling units, a big topic down at the state, but these again, when the residential lot, when the single family lot, when the dimensions allow for it and it's a comfortable design, being able to add a little bit more housing supply that would be affordable, again, small footprints. The manufactured home market has made huge improvements. The city already has design guidelines. So again, adhering to those design guidelines, allowing for these manufactured homes into the market. There's, again, some beautiful products out there that don't fall into the stigma of a mobile home or a manufactured home park that you may be used to. So again, adhering to design standards, allowing for this kind of ownership unit. Prices have increased dramatically for this product, but it's still one of the most affordable ownership options in the region. So continuing to support those housing programs that are targeting lower income, workforce level, essential worker type wages. That's the 40% to 80% AMI level. We even after these new ones come in, there's still going to be a gap, and we've got continued population growth that will need these. Anytime you add a high wage worker, the ripple effect is you add 2 more lower wage workers. So the service workers, the essential workers, this housing inventory is a huge asset to a community. It's really great to see Maricopa kind of, as they're growing, adding this as opposed to building completely out and then trying to find small infill parcels for them. So I think you're on a great trajectory there. Continuing to support those programs, support the expansion of the housing government voucher programs like housing choice vouchers and things like that, increasing the opportunities for lower income households to comfortably afford a place to live in the city. And then our last recommendation on this presentation here is the senior living, age-in-place, senior apartments, independent living, assisted living, memory care facilities. Those are still yet to be developed in the city. So there is yet to be a first of where is our aging population if they're ready to move out of their home and they want to stay in the community. So encouraging those types of development in the community so that we have suitable housing options across the age spectrum. And with that, I'll open it up to questions that you have.
Thanks, Danny. Commissioners, questions, comments, anybody? Commissioner Club.
I'll kick it off. Have several things. Thank you for your presentation. One of the things that I didn't really notice in the report, and I know it kind of ties back a little bit more to the general plan, so this part is actually a little bit more of a statement, but it ties together. One of the concerns that I have with, let me back up. I'm a proponent of multifamily and higher density design, and I agree that we need more of it. And I think some of the job creators that are looking here and coming here and so on need it and will support it. So I am in favor of that. The challenge that I'm running into is what I'm not seeing is in this report is diversity of location. Right now, one of the challenges I think that we have as a city is, I'm going to pick on Home Depot. Currently, I ran some of my own numbers not too long ago. Within a mile of Home Depot, we have roughly 3,000 home sites with 3,000 multifamily units, either open or on their way under construction. And I think there's even a few more to come. And of the existing, the 4,000 plus units that you had mentioned that we have, it's a big population in such a small area. And so making sure that we spread the love a little bit. And I think that's going to also help grow some of those commercial markets throughout the community that we want and we need. So I think that is something that needs to be addressed either through this report or through the general plan, but I think it's a combination of both. One of the other areas that, and that, like I said, that was more of a statement. Question I have is, and I don't want this to go political, but it is a little bit political because I just came back from the National Association of Home Builders Builder Show in Las Vegas a couple weeks ago. And the sentiment among the builders, the sentiment among, and the follow-up reports that I'm seeing since then is there's a lot of builders that are starting to use the R word as recession. There's concerns of supply, of labor, of interest rates not going down, interest rates either remaining and possibly even increasing. Maricopa got hit really hard the last time we had a recession. Yeah. Almost killed the city. And my concern is I didn't really notice anything in your metrics that allowed for any of that, especially in this year or next. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yes, and that's just a function of long-term forecasting. So whenever we do long-term forecasting, it's you ignore the business cycle. So yeah, you could do some scenario planning if we were to go into recession over the next 12 or 24 months. I think that's a worthwhile effort if you want to do that. I would say that the makeup of what a future recession, if we were to go into recession, night and day to what we had before. We have no glut of oversupply of housing. And that, Maricopa was the poster child of speculative building, sure. Excess vacancy, and then spending the next decade absorbing all of that. We do not have that. So we do not have that housing supply issue. I mean, an oversupply issue. I would love, we can talk about recession right now. Blue chip forecasters forecasting about a 31% chance of recession over the next 12 months. That's increased from December, which was at 25%, but that's still a pretty low level. And there's a lot of uncertainty. So this is one of the hardest times for an economist to forecast when there's a 24-hour news cycle. The threat of tariffs, the removal of tariffs, the reciprocity, what could happen. So I think what's happening is there's a lot more uncertainty, and it's really hard to plan for it. And when you're forced to plan for it, you maybe do nothing. So we could see some pullback. We are seeing impacts of immigration policy to our supply of labor, especially in the construction industry. So it's just hasn't. None of those concerns have really have filtered into the hard data yet. So we're actually seeing a very robust labor force right now. Our last 6 months, we're averaging almost 200,000 new jobs across the United States. Very low unemployment. We're at 4.1%. So, we're actually in a really good place, but it just doesn't feel great in terms of sentiment. So I think consumer sentiment is down. And if consumers get skittish, they can stop spending their money and create a recession. So there are very, very valid points, but as we stand now, the economy is in a really strong position. It is slowing slightly, but there is, compared to 2 years ago, 2 years ago, it was 65, 70% calling for a recession in the next 12 months, and that just never formulated. So it's really hard to say. If the government really does, cut in the way that they do and try to eat into their deficit spending, that could have a drag on the economy. Will we get tax cuts or not? The tax cuts would be an accelerator to the economy. The tariffs are creating a potential inflationary issue and a slowdown in the economy, but we just don't know how real they are yet, and it just hasn't filtered down into the hard data. But I think it's a worthwhile effort to talk about recession. I wouldn't compare the next recession to the Great Recession of 2007 and 8. I would say if it does occur, it would be a more shallow recession. And Arizona typically does very well in recession. We typically don't lose jobs. We may go down to near zero, and then we kind of boom out of them. So we're in a pretty good position regionally to weather that storm. And again, we're not in that same housing-related recession issue. And I will to comment on your first comment too. Yeah. It correct that the report is agnostic to where these developments are taking place, and if there is a concern of a concentration within a certain area of the city, I think that's a great topic to address in the housing element and the plan. So we're dealing with the hard numbers, but or maybe there's some community feedback that we want to see these types of developments in strategic locations or more spread out through the city. I think that's a great discussion to have. But you are correct that the analysis is agnostic. It's just taking the city as a whole.
Numbers. Okay. I have a few more items here. Sorry. One of the other challenges that I kind of read in the report, and I understand where you're coming from, and that's in relation to the, roughly the 30% vacancy rate. And I know you said in your presentation, don't get too worked up over that. However, we look at a 30% vacancy rate, multifamily units in the Southeast Valley, Phoenix metro area, Chandler, Gilbert, Ahwatukee. They're all operating in 5 to 10% vacancy rates on average. Most of those developers look at anything under 10 to 15, anything in the 10 to 15 range as being essentially unsustainable for the market. Anything lower than that, they're not paying the bills. They're not covering the bills. And if we're already at 30% vacancy rate, we're looking to bring on your needs assessment is saying another 1,500 units per year. We're adding units to fill in for units we're not even filling it right now. And as industry grows, I think that dynamic is going to change, and I would agree with that. I just don't know that in the short term, I see challenges there, and I'd hate to see some of these new developments that are just opening up if they can't be sustainable, and the owners pull the plug.
Sure. Yeah, and I would expect anything not under construction now is probably taking a hard look at that, and maybe two things happen. Everything that's being built now was basically underwritten in low interest rate environment. So, and this is happening all across Greater Phoenix. Is we're getting an oversupply. We got an oversupply in 24, and we're getting an even bigger oversupply this year. So, those are underway. They're going to be constructed. There's definitely going to be more apartments built than renters that are going to need those apartments. And so we're expecting a lull over, in 26, in 27, and 28. So, and the multifamily market is a little bit more volatile than the single family side. So that's why I say I believe it's transitory. I think it could delay. If a developer's coming in and they can pull the same reports that we can, and they can see that vacancy rate. There is a distinction between stabilized vacancy and overall vacancy. So we're reporting overall vacancy. I don't know all the numbers that you're pulling for Southeast Valley, but those are also bigger markets that are more mature, and so maybe they're absorbing that. But multifamily vacancy is elevated all across the county, and it's more pronounced in faster growing areas like in the West Valley, Goodyear, that saw a lot of apartment development. You saw a lot of apartment, Casa Grande seeing a lot. But again, it's not like that amount of apartments is expected to be developed for every single year going forward. I think this is a little bit of a bubble that you'll see it drop off after 26, and then as that absorbs, I think it'll just naturally take care of itself, where you have some approved projects that may just delay if they expect this this vacancy rate to stay elevated, but it's also something to watch.
Okay, thank you. So much of your report was based on the need, and I agree with the need for more affordable housing, and I 100% believe that our community is vastly underserved for those people, and we need more of it. Whether it be, and I like your ideas of higher density, single family, maybe condo, opportunities for ownership, ADUs, things like that. I'm a proponent of. But what I didn't see in your report was anything. Maricopa's going out and trying to attract these larger corporations, larger companies to come here with a new industrial park and some of the other things that are happening. If you follow social media locally at all, everyone says we need a hospital, which I agree. There's all these needs that our community need that we need. My concern is we're so laser focused on the affordability side, but if we get a hospital, where are the doctors going to come? Where are the professionals going to come that are working at Intel? The engineers that are coming in for this $20 billion plant that's 15 miles away from us. We're a better resource for those employees than Queen Creek, Santan Valley, and so on. But they have housing product there that can, the higher income levels will support. We don't have much of that option here. In your point data, chart you had, there was one builder that was building larger homes. Mm-hmm. Everyone else was in the kind of 2,500, 2,800, square foot range. And so we don't have any that upper move up level. We don't have any custom luxury. We need a place for the CEOs, the engineers, the higher income earners to bring their business here and have their business here. Can you talk to how that figures into your report at all?
Yeah, I would say I would probably I think it's a valid point. Like if it's, again, this is a housing needs assessment. Your last iteration had a housing needs assessment, and then a plan was formulated based on the information that they received, and it was driven by staff and elected officials and the community. So if it's a priority, I think it should be part of the goal. I don't know how much, because it's, again, not represented in the community, and when we're looking at the data for the types of jobs that are forecasted, it's usually a very small percentage that make that executive level pay, mm-hmm. and then the rest of there's a range of salaries that come in, and so I guess just looking at where the need was, the highest and greatest need was in these lower income tiers. But again, if it's a priority, that's something that you feel is absent in the market that you want to gear toward, then you can make that a plan. If it's not represented in the market, that's usually a higher, it's a harder thing to go out and try to attract. You got to bring those developers out here, show them where they would develop, show them where the amenities are, and it's a whole effort. But if it's a priority, then you should certainly include it.
Well, and I think that it needs to be, because, as you said earlier, for every single higher income earner, you have two lower income earners, mm-hmm. and we still got to make room for those guys too. And I don't know that we have a housing stock. I'm not saying we need to allocate 30% of our new housing stock to high-end luxury homes, but I think that there does need to be some allocation level to attract those people to want to come here and not Chandler, not, Gilbert and having to commute.
Yeah, the typical, areas that they think of. No, I think it's great. You're constantly in a prove it mentality here. I mean, 5 years ago, someone came to us for an apartment study, and they say, how do you prove that there's demand for apartments in Maricopa when there's no apartments in Maricopa? And it's like, yeah, it's a lot harder. That's not a traditional market study when we're looking at vacancy and things like that. So, yeah, it's going to take some creativity, but if it's a priority, I'd say it should be included.
And the last one is more of a statement, kind of I'm also a proponent of ADUs, and I've worked on numerous ADUs up in the Phoenix market as some of the rules have changed and throughout the Phoenix metro area. And one of the things that I'm seeing in that, to kind of help offset some of the data points that you presented today, was an ADU, and it can be a difficult discussion, but an ADU as a rental property, if done right, can actually add, especially for people that were able to buy their homes at a lower price point maybe 10 years ago. Their mortgage isn't as higher, but offsetting some of that income disparagement that may be occurring today, having that ADU income, it helps with our lower income housing stock, but it also helps them maintain their bills and their operation expenses of their existing homes.
Yeah.
So there is a a ripple effect that occurs here.
Yeah, and there's a concerted effort, especially for municipalities when they're advertising for their jobs, to be able to make that argument. Again, you do not have the same affordability issue as a lot of other communities, but there are other municipalities. We're working in Prescott and Prescott Valley. A worker accepts the position, comes and tries to find a house, and then rejects the position because they can't find it. But it's a great fix for supplementing your income as a rental property to supplement that mortgage and make it affordable at new price ranges. The only issue we're seeing, especially in more tourism-related markets, is you build the ADU and then it just turns into a short-term rental. So again, it doesn't solve for essential workers that are looking for a cheaper long-term rent, but it does help supplement that property owner's income. So that's all we're kind of trying to address is we're just trying to find ways to continue to increase the housing supply in innovative ways.
Yeah. Very good. That's all I had. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Robertson.
That's a lot to unpack. A
lot
lot of information, a lot of data. Thank you for the presentation. I was struck by the almost 100% deviation between the demand forecast, between your forecast and MAG's.
Yeah.
How does that square? How do we get 100% deviation?
They're cowards. No. It's very typical in a long-term forecasting that the first 3 to 5 years are, very data-driven. They can see the pipeline coming through. They can see the permit activity happening, and they've got a higher level of certainty as to what's going to happen. And then, kind of just rule of thumb, being more conservative is safer than being less conservative. I feel the opposite is true when you're trying to plan a community. When you're trying to plan for the growth of a community, it actually serves you better to consider a more aggressive forecast so that you're preparing for that growth. And if it weren't to come in, you're at least preparing for it, as opposed to being on your back heels, seeing all this growth happen and trying to react to it. So I think it's great to have this range of forecasts to consider. The official state forecast there. We're just looking at the hard data, and we're looking at your trajectory. We see no reason why there would be any drop-off in terms of the city's growth. And so it was just a glaring difference that we had to create a new scenario for.
Are you both groups pulling from the same pot of data?
It's just a difference of methodology, and you could probably go and pick their brains, but that's my understanding of it. Is anytime we look out, I mean, even if you get these vendors like Esri is a nationally recognized vendor of demographics. and they'll show Maricopa's growth, 8% growth, 6% growth a year, and then you ask for their 5-year forecast, and they say, oh, about 1.2% growth. You know, it just doesn't, when you hit the, you know, so some of it's algorithms that I can't quite, it's a kind of a black box, and you just say, okay, well,
philosophy and experience differences maybe too?
I just, you know, that's.
I have a hard time believing both of them.
Sure.
One at this end and one at this end. I'm going to land somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
You know?
My rule of thumb is I try to be retired before I have to account for my forecast. So I try to forecast it far enough out where I'm not here anymore.
I can't wait for the media reports tomorrow on this meeting.
But I mean, we try to be as transparent as possible. And so we're not just saying, here's what we think, but, you know, by showing you that historical data, yes, you have grown rapidly, but there's also nothing pointing us towards saying that you're not going to continue that trajectory. So we found it, you know, that we just found it to be too conservative, and we thought you needed those additional scenarios to consider. Yeah.
Commissioner Yocum.
Yep, I'd just like to follow up on Robert's discussion on ADUs. About a year ago, the Arizona legislature came within one vote of stripping us of being able to do our own zoning code. And one of the suggestions that they had, because there was such a critical shortage of housing, was ADUs. And I think based on that, it motivated some communities, including Scottsdale, to allow ADUs, and I think that's something that we should look at very closely.
I agree, yeah, and I think that you can count on continued legislative proposals in that way of removing the control of municipalities, kind of trying to force this issue of by right zoning and things like that. But yeah,
I agree, because everybody and anybody I talk to, whenever I have the opportunity, I give them the necessary email sites and whatever, so when that issue comes up again. As a matter of fact, I think it was one of the legislators said, I just got tired of getting these 1,300 emails, so, and it helps, it really does.
Yeah, so I appreciate the efforts at the legislature in recognizing the issue and trying to do something about it. But I think it's best left at the municipal level, that you have control over design standards and density and making sure that it makes sense for your community.
Commissioner Thomas.
Hello. Outstanding report.
Thank you.
One question I had at the very beginning, you mentioned that the report by the U.S., the size and the growth, that this will turn into an annual piece of a report. But at the same time, you said that it will be somewhat surpassed, that we won't have enough information, or we'll be growing too fast, or the market won't be filled for it to be accurate every year?
It will really depend. It's been such a dramatic last 5 years that I do think that the census data, as soon as it comes out, it's outdated for your community. So the good news is your population size has made it so that the census will report this type of information on an annual basis. Mm-hmm. It will be a year old by the time they report it, right. But you're catching up to it. So next year on their release, you're going to see, oh, they actually found some of our apartments, and then the following year and following year. But I think in terms of housing needs assessment, you really do need that additional data, the boots on the ground, talking to planning staff, how many permits did we pull, what kind of permits are there, looking at, the new home market that is active, they're reporting their sales and their products and their permits on a monthly basis, so there's more timely information that we can use to supplement it. The census does a great job, robust in terms of demographics and household composition, lots of great information. Again, they are still suppressing some of that data because of your size, but I think it will continue to get better. And then I think as your market maybe normalizes, which I don't know when necessarily Maricopa will normalize. It's just on such a fast growth pace that I think is important to recognize that we want to look at all sources of data and supplement the census with more timely information.
Okay, thank you. And the last thing I would like to comment on is your recommendations I found very interesting. The density being a key part of development, and also aging community. I just think that's essential, that their interest in taking care of a single-family dwelling, but want to move into just as nice of a place. And even that dwelling may turn into a nice rental property. Coming from the Midwest, the city of Chicago, when you heard about density, that sound like projects. But these houses are beautiful to be considered in a density type of area. So it's changed my perspective on what a density community would look like. So thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, no, there's such great innovation, and sometimes it takes some proactive measurements from the city to push a developer in that direction and do that. But yeah, I think there's some beautiful products out there. And again, if we're not using tax money to solve the issue of affordability, and we're asking the private market to do it, that's been the biggest mechanism, is let me build a few more units and we can get that price point down.
Yep.
Through the chair. So I had one more in my notes that I skipped over. I apologize. And it kind of trails back to some of the recommendations. And I know this is a housing study, not a commercial study, but what about live work? You know, Maricopa is in desperate need of office, even small retails, things like that. And other cities have been able to get, small infill developments to, work well with live work, and it kind of serves both purposes. It can be done as a condo, so there's ownership opportunities there for a business owner and so on. So, thoughts on that, and as you've done more of this work?
I would say live work has had a difficult time in adoption in the greater Phoenix market. So there are some examples of it, and there are also examples of it where the unit's owned above and the space is vacant below. So I would say in terms of as a horizontal mixed use option, where you just have either condominiums or some sort of residential right next to an office park or an office or a retail or something like that, where it's a mixed use project, it's a mixed use community with commercial, with employment, with residential, but not necessarily requiring it to be a vertically mixed use where it's the commercial below and residential above. It could work in certain locations. It's more viable in a more urban setting, but that kind of goes back to your point of, do we have too much multifamily in these areas of town? You really want to make sure that kind of residential product is strategically located, maybe so that you do have a short commute time to an employment opportunity in the city. But I'm a proponent of live work and walkable communities and pedestrian friendly or bikeable, bike from your residence to your place of work, as long as we're not requiring it to be a certain look a certain way in terms of if we want it to be vertically mixed use versus horizontal. That would be my 2 cents on that.
And I would agree with that. And my tie back on that would be communities where I think it's had some challenges. Phoenix, for instance, they also have a really high office and retail vacancy rate.
Yes.
Whereas we have none. Number one. Number two, there was a business roundtable that was done in December, I believe it was December. And one of the things, it was great turnout, a lot of small businesses from our community were here. And one of the consensus of that was shared by so many was, we're working out of our home. Mm-hmm. We have a print shop in our living room because we have nowhere else the community needs a print shop. We got business. We just have nowhere to put it. So, having opportunities, it speaks to, we need more office space too.
Yeah.
But these people are doing live work now in our housing communities, because they have nowhere else to go. And it might be just a way to kind of help bridge some of that as well. So,
Yeah, I would say, start with your.
We have a little different
Start with your
dynamic
office.
here.
Yeah, start getting some office in. But yeah, co-working space, it could be amazing for that. And I know that certain municipalities, the same situation where they do a survey, and there is a value add if you can get someone from their outside of their from a residential home into a business setting, into a zoned, commercially zoned area to where their businesses can expand and things like that. But yeah, just getting the office space here would be a huge win.
Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. I only really had one question for you. So in the report, it says the current housing affordability gap, or the difference between the housing available in Maricopa and the housing needed in order to ensure that working households can live in the city for a reasonable cost, is about $7,800, or 33.4%. What is the difference between the previous housing assessment and this one, percentage-wise, if any?
I'll have to get that number for you. I don't know if it was included in the last report or not, but I'll double check on that. You're not, I think we have the same table showing Pinal counties and then the state of Arizona. So you're not like uniquely unaffordable in terms of that. So it's just all of the numbers have increased over the last several years, but it's not like your number stands out when you compare yourself to other regions.
Thank you.
But I'll get you that time series.
Commissioner Brown.
All right, a quick question. Well, two of them. My first question: when you look at the data that's on there, you have one of the first pages was talking about your population projections with yours and like MAG's. With yours, is that same data then used to make the projections on additional, throughout the report? Is that where you're basing that from? Is from those predictions?
Yeah. So and we keep them all separate. So we've translated housing demand from those population projections. So you also have 3 scenarios of housing unit demand based on those projections.
Okay, cool. The next question I had was really about that projection itself, because we see the MAG one, there's a few inflection points on there as it goes out, but yours seems almost overly simplified and linear. And so I was kind of curious on how you came up with that linear projection when that doesn't really fit our past growth patterns, where it fits other types of models a little bit better. So I was wondering if you could speak to that.
Yeah, and it does probably look graphically linear. It's not, but it does, because it's a 15-year time horizon, and we do not see any obstruction to continued growth. But I don't know if there's not a table in there, we can provide the table of what our projected growth is. It does step down, so the first 5 years is more aggressive than the final 10 years. So there is an inflection point after the 5-year horizon. It's just not as dramatic as what MAG does for their inflection point.
Okay, thanks, because I think that explains what it is, because it looks on the graph nice and straight, but that makes sense. Thank you.
Any other comments, commissioners? Nope. All right. Rudy?
Chairman Singleton, just some final comments for myself. If anything, before I came in 2007, the city actually never did a housing assessment until 2017. And what we're trying to do here is try to keep up. Every 5 years, we should be doing at least an update to this itself. Great discussion, great feedback, great comments. If anything, what's interesting enough, our planning team, wholeheartedly on everyday basis with developers are trying to get other type of density, type of development patterns for housing. The cluster housing, they call it auto court type of housing developments. We haven't seen that yet, but those are things that we can definitely do on our side as well with our development standards, our zoning standards as well, to really encourage these types of, other than single family attached housing or attached housing or even cluster housing or fiveplex types of housing. It can be done. It has been done in Arizona. We just haven't seen that market in Maricopa itself. But those are our opportunities when it comes to those planning developments that comes to you on every so often basis, is we challenge our developers. Like, we're hungry for another sort of housing development pattern other than your single family detached or small lot housing. Maybe it's that cluster product that's going to bring us that density that provides that sense of neighborhood and sense of character and sense of prideful as well. Because it can be done, it has been done in several communities throughout the valley. We just haven't, in my opinion, pushed enough. But these are all good feedback, and definitely items that we could definitely implement our general plan as goals and objectives, and further strengthen our code and for our code standards as well moving forward in the future. So thank you all for the feedback and presentation, and we'll take that on to council for recommendation as well. So thank you all.
All right, that takes us to reports from commission and/or staff.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening tonight, and good discussion. Danny, thank you very much for coming and being with us tonight. That was extremely enlightening. Just a couple of things for you all real quick. We do have items on the agenda for 2 weeks from tonight, so we will be back here. The date escapes me, but two weeks from this evening. The other thing I would like to do is just point out, we've been talking a lot about the general plan. We've kicked off the general plan. We've got a survey out for Maricopa residents, and I just wanted to mention it again this evening, that if you're a Maricopa resident, you can go to the city website at maricopa-az.gov, click on News and Notifications, which will then take you to Maricopa News. There's a link there to our community outreach, and on that is a survey that can be taken. I would encourage all residents to, if you haven't taken that survey, please go to the website. It's going to help us in our efforts as we update this general plan moving forward. Chairman Singleton, that concludes my update, and thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't think we need an E-session, so that moves us to adjournment. Do I have a motion? Have a second? All in favor say aye. This is adjourned.